Rebecca Katz of Clean Soups. Welcome.
Thank you.
I know the weather cleared a little, but when we were planning this event, we thought what a perfect time to get together and talk about not only comforting, nourishing food, but something that'll make you feel your absolute best for the new year. And I was speaking at length with Rebecca before the event about how obsessed I am with this book. So do not hesitate to get your copy. I can't stop making soup. And I'm not even really like a soup person, but tell us, what's the idea behind this magical vision of yours?
So today, I think what we're going to do is I'm going to make one soup out of the book. It's the Moroccan carrot soup with chermoula. And it's one of my, it's what I call from the cashmere sweater soup collection. I'm going to use this handy dandy Ferrari of blenders of Vitamix to whip in this incredible amount of air. And so we're going to make this soup, and it has a special broth. It's called the magic mineral broth, which we will talk about. And I'm just going to start so we can get the soup cooking, and then I'll go into a little bit of like more about what the book is about. So the big challenge for me today is how well I'm going to be able to use this stovetop. But
anyone who's been to an event with us knows it's not the most intuitive cooktop.
But I feel like I have a lot of technical support.
We have your back, yes.
So I think I'm good. So when I start making a soup, the first thing that I do is I add some fat to the bottom of the pot. And in this case, I'm using olive oil. And I'm going to talk a lot about this card that you have with the acronym that is called FASS, F-A-S-S, which is fat, acid, salty, sweet. And so just to give you an idea, fat is like a little magic carpet that transverses your taste buds. It carries the flavor back and forth. So if you're eating food that doesn't have any fat in it, it's kind of like, there's something that's not satiating about it, and you just kind of keep wanting more and more and more. So it used to be that fat was like, but now we know that fat is really good. Fat is really good for our brains, but it's also the key to carrying flavor. So I'm letting my pot get nice and hot, and I'm starting to see that my olive oil is shimmering. So far, so good. And so here I'm going to add the first ingredients, which are some onions. So when I make soup, usually I'm starting with a base of like onions, carrots, and celery, but this soup is just onions. And the second thing that I do is once the onions go into the pot, I give them a generous pinch of salt. Now, salt is like a little scrubbing bubble, and it goes into the onions, and it pulls out the onion's natural sweetness. I mean, we don't really think of onions as being sweet, but there's a lot of liquid in here, a lot of sweet liquid that's going to be released. Now I'm going to turn this down. And so every time I add what I call like a new food to the pot, or it's like I call food like my little cast of characters. And every time I add something new to the pot, I'm always going to add a pinch of salt. And this is what we call layering. And this is like, so you want to constantly layer your flavors, because that's where you're going to get what I call the maximum yum. So I'm just letting this go for a little bit, just to get a little kind of like golden glow or golden hue on these onions, because onions can be a little bit, if you don't let them get golden, if you don't kind of let them get to that translucent stage in cooking, they can be a little sour. So adding the salt in to help release the sweetness and just letting them go a bit is a is a good thing. So, you asked me why soups?
Yeah, like, what's the deal?
What's the deal? Well, so I've been a soup maker since I was 5, and I was sitting on my mother's yellow Formica counter in her 1953 Youngstown kitchen, which she still has, with the old coil electric stove, the whole bit. But anyway, so I come from a family of soup shamans. And then when I was in culinary school, I really I gravitated to soups. And I feel like soup is like giving somebody a culinary hug. You can get so many, there's nothing more nourishing than a really good bowl of soup. And there's a lot of alchemy in making soup and creativity in making soup. And I think it's also of all of the culinary mediums, like all the things that you can do, saute, grill, be a saucier, or whatever. Soup is the most forgiving, and it allows for creativity. So it's really good for people who like to color out of the lines, which would be me. And it's so I laugh because I create recipes, and I have to write everything. I'm getting everything dialed in, like all my measurements are dialed in, but really,
You're just throwing stuff in
I'm just throwing
there.
stuff in. So it's like I have to use my left brain when I'm creating a book, but when I am left to my own devices, I am just hats off to the wind. I'm just throwing.
But this is not your average soup cookbook. This is not just a regular soup cookbook.
Yeah, so you're right. So I do a lot of work in the health and wellness space, and this is my 5th book child, and the cookbook that came before, and all the soup chapters in my previous books were my favorite chapters to write. And I really believe that soup is a portal for really amazing nutrition. And I don't mean nutrition that's or a healthy food like hippie gruely or, just meh. I mean like really yummy, sustainable food. And so through the book, what I do is I give you the keys to the kingdom of how to make soup. What do you need to have to do it? And what are the tricks of the trade? What are the tactics behind it? And what are all the nutrient-dense things that you can put in a soup to make you feel like all your cells are sort of waking up, right? So now my onions are exactly where I want them. They're see? They're nice.
Beautiful golden.
They're beautiful and golden. So now I'm going to add the star of this soup, the carrots. And so with those carrots, I add another generous pinch of salt. And now I'm just going to stir them up and get them nice and coated. And now here is where I'm going to add all my spices. Now, oftentimes when people make soup, they think they never know what to do with their spices. When they're first starting, it's I'll throw them in at the end, or I've heard all different variations on a theme. Usually standing in the supermarket line, I'm hearing people, and I'm oh, no, you don't want to do that. So here I've got this. This is the base, right? And there's all this lovely fat, and everything is dancing in the pan. This is where I'm going to put my spices. Now, full disclosure, I am putting in saffron, a pinch of red chili pepper flakes, cumin and coriander, and some cinnamon. Now, when you look at the ingredient list of a Rebecca Katz book, you go, really? God, it's so long. But when you realize that like I'm usually using like 5 spices or 3 spices, and that takes up space. But if you have your pantry set up and you have your spices, then really you're only dealing with carrots and onions and olive oil.
I could completely testify. I've been making soups out of this book since the new year, and I have only had to shop for ingredients one time. Everything else was things that I had on hand, just was able to play with.
Yay.
Really accessible and really delicious.
So one of the things that's really interesting about the herbs and spices is that we don't necessarily think of spices as being like, we think of them as being flavorful, but we don't necessarily think of them as being like these antioxidant powerhouses. Like amazing spices can do amazing things to our bodies. And we don't necessarily think that way. But for example, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon has more antioxidants than a half a cup of blueberries. So super powerhouses, so many phytochemicals and things that, you know, can shift gene expression and all sorts of things. So here, I mean, we're making soup, but we're also, again, adding some incredible nutrient density. So I am going to add right now just like a half a cup of the magic mineral broth, which you and I will
Truly magical.
Truly magical, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But this is what I call creating a flavor seal. So I've got half a cup of broth, which I'm just going to let it boil and reduce just a little bit before I sink the rest of the broth in. And what that does is it concentrates all the flavor and it almost like seals it up so that when I go and put the rest of my broth in and I let it cook, all those flavors are going to kind of do their thing. They're going to just permeate those little carrots and onions and everything else. And that's, honestly, that is the trick. This part right here, it's like saute your onions in good olive oil, salt, put your spices in. The main event, put some more salt in, do this little thing with half a cup of liquid, and you are set. So in the book, I have a template where I literally, I do this template about how you know, the stages of how you put things in. And it's like once you learn that, you can make any soup any way you want with any vegetable. I mean, we could be working with any vegetable here. Carrots are kind of easy, especially because they're so easy and accessible and warming and easy to chop. And when I was in culinary school and we were doing knife skills, oh my God, we had to chop carrots. I remember hauling back to my apartment like 5-pound bags of carrots just to practice. So now this is just where I want it. So I'm going to put the rest of my magic mineral broth in here. And this is about 8 cups. I'm going to probably use 6 and just keep some just in case. And this is a great way to store your broth in the freezer in these types of containers. All right. And now I just need to find a lid.
Ooh, lid, guys? Coming.
Lid coming. Great. Incoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Noelle.
Thank you. Okay. So you ready to go over and talk about the main event?
Let's talk about this broth.
Okay.
Cannot get enough.
All right. So this broth has a little history. So these are the ingredients for the magic mineral broth. And I created this broth 20 years ago. And it took 60 gallons, 2 cycles around the earth. And it was like so specific just in terms of all the ingredients and getting it dialed in. And it's kind of has a cult following now.
Of which I am one. Newly, I cannot get over it.
And it's the reason that it's so different than a normal vegetable broth is that I'm using like normal things that you would find in stock. So carrots and celery and parsley. And, but then I add like sweet potato. Like this is a Hana sweet potato. It's like there's so many different variations of sweet potatoes, but this is a Hana sweet potato, or you could use a white Japanese sweet potato, or if you don't want to fuss, you could just use any sweet potato. But Chef Didi was kind enough to get me the varietals here. So a garnet sweet potato, a white sweet potato, because this has a bit of a nuttier flavor to it, and then just some red skin potatoes and onion, and then this is where we kind of get funky. I have some bay leaves and peppercorns, eye of newt. No, just kidding. And then
just a little,
just a touch, and some garlic and onion, and then this is kombu. So now I wouldn't use all of this, but I would use about this much. Now, kombu is usually used to make dashi, but here it adds a very distinctive, like umami flavor, but also this is so chock full of trace minerals and certain compounds of B vitamins, actually, in this little strip. So this is like nutrient density to the whatever. Kombu. And it's a seaweed. So it's a kelp. Yeah, so you can get it in any Asian market. You can get it at Whole Foods. It's got the shelf life of 100 years.
I ordered some online.
Yeah.
You have Amazon Prime. I had mine the next day.
Yeah, so very accessible and long shelf life. So you're a magic mineral broth maker. So this looks kind of intimidating, right? A little bit.
It's a lot at first. When I got it all assembled, I was like, okay, a big pot, luckily.
Right. So there are two ways you can go about this. If you've got a big pot, right, you can just do one whole batch at once, okay? Now, I call this the chop and throw.
Which was the best part. I mean, once I cleaned everything, there's really no other work.
Right, because, here's the deal, right? All of the skins on all of these, right? The mineral content in your vegetables is right there, okay? So this isn't what I call a glamorama stock. I mean, this is not like, a gorgeous bouillon or whatever. I mean, there's sediment that you will get when you strain the stock, and that's great for the kind of soup making that we're doing, right? Because it's adding more nutrient density, and it's not this clear consommé that you're serving to the Queen of England or anything. So we're okay about it. It's like a rustic stock. So literally, it's like chop, throw. Really, it's like, I think I even did a video where I was chopping and throwing it in the back or whatever. So, and these are cut, these are like the hugest sweet potatoes in the land. I mean, this is like gigunda, but so you could cut this smaller. And again, you're throwing it in, all of this. Now, if you don't have a huge stock pot, right? You could buy all your ingredients, chop it all up, take half, put it in a zip top bag, put it in your freezer, and make just a half a batch, okay? The other thing is, if you have an instant pot, this cooks really fast in an instant pot, and it also is great in a slow cooker. The thing about cooking it on the stove is that you get this, just checking on this, hang on. See, I'm becoming friends with this.
See, we got it. It's fine.
Yeah. So the thing about the broth is that it's sort of like aromatherapy because
Truly, my house smells amazing every time I make it.
it does. I think it's the allspice berries and the culmination of the allspice berries and the whatever, but it really smells beautiful.
The ultimate winter candle.
It's like, so so now, like, I'm a big proponent of making this broth. And in my book, there's a Venn diagram. And the diagram is the middle is the magic mineral broth, right? And of this broth, you can make 5 other really fun broths. So you make this once, right? Then you can make a Thai coconut broth.
Which is amazing. Just
I
in a
did not
thermos.
pay her.
It's amazing.
Okay, just FYI.
No, I showed up today and was like, let me tell you all the reasons why I'm obsessed with your book. We scheduled the event long ago, and I have become a complete devotee ever since.
She's a she's like on the verge of becoming the major magic mineral broth. I mean,
I'm going to get a sign. I'm going to walk around.
Right.
I'm going to tell people about it.
maybe you can get it from her, right? So, and you can make a bone broth out of it. You can make a beautiful pasture beef bone broth. You can make a chicken bone broth. You can make a homemade veg, and you can amp it up and make it into a big immune boosting broth with burdock and ginger and turmeric. But once you've got it made in your freezer, and I love freezing it in these kind of quart, and look, this is the best. The tape, right? It's like everybody needs tape like this to make sure that their broth is marked so it doesn't turn into a science experiment.
But how long could you keep it in the freezer? 2 months?
Oh, no.
Longer?
This is 6 months. This has got a long shelf life.
Mine
in the
has
freezer.
not lasted that long
Right.
because I've been using it, but...
Right. So it lasts a long time, and if you're tight on freezer space, you can let your broth cool, and you can let it sit on the stove overnight and let it cool. And because it doesn't have any beef in it, so or animal protein, so you can let it, and you can decant it the next day, and you can put it in zip top bags, just get all that air out of it, and then just lie it flat. So that's if you're real estate challenged, right? So the whole key is if you've got broth in your freezer, you have soup in 20 minutes. That's the proposition. And then you can make, all of these different soups. And then when you make your soups, and there's a whole thing about storage, like once you make your soups, what are you going to do? Like back in the day, I would make soup and it would be like, oh my God, I'm eating the same soup for 5 days in a row. I couldn't be more bored. I never want to eat this soup again. Now, when you make soup, you take half of it and eat, and the other half you freeze in either this size or in pint-size containers, and you mark it, and you develop a freezer inventory so that when you come home at 7 or 8 or whenever, you have soup. You have like a variety pack in your freezer.
And based on how easy it is to make, I was able to make the broth and 2 soups in an afternoon on a Sunday, and have done that then like 3 times, and have just had like 8 or 9 different soups hanging around in the freezer. You're exactly right. It's the quickness of it. It tastes like it's been simmering all day,
right?
But it's actually a really quick process.
So I think that's where people we think of soup as being this long, simmering process. Like when my Nana made soup, when she made chicken, her homemade chicken soup, it was like a major production because she was doing it all at once, and but it really doesn't have to be that way. So I'm going to check. I'm doing this like speed flash.
So can I ask a question just about the length of bone?
Oh, right. If you are making a bone broth, and we're going to get ready to go here in a minute, If you are making a bone broth, the reason to let it simmer forever and ever and ever with some vinegar in it is to pull all that collagen out of the bones, right? But I'm going to give you a shortcut. You can buy really high quality powdered collagen if you don't want to simmer your broth that long and you want to add that extra boost, whether it's a veg stock or it's a bone broth, if you don't want to go down that road. But yeah, it's getting all that glycogen and collagen out of those bones. And bone broths, amazing. Guys, if you ever need a reset, broth is really a nice way to go. More so than juicing, really, at least at this time of year, for sure. So you ready to blend?
Yeah, let's see it.
Okay.
Cashmere sweaters, here we come.
All right. So, hang on. The off. Ah, great. Okay. So let's see if I can make it to the blender without burning myself.
Are you sure?
I may, but let's see. Okay. So normally I don't film my Vitamix this high, but since I'm in front of a large group of people, it seems like a dramatic moment. And
everybody cover your eyes.
Okay. Now, wow. Okay. This is why I take a towel. Are you sure? You might get spin art on your... Okay. So this puts the cashmere in the cashmere sweater soup. Okay. Now, I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see what I'm doing and I don't hurt anybody. I'm going to start on variable. So good.
Everyone's safe.
Oh.
You did it!
Woo! Gosh. Okay, and everybody's safe so far. Okay. So, now, I've got soup, but not quite, right? Because one of the most important things about soup is, what does it taste like at the end? How many people have made a recipe and they get to the end and it's sort of like,
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And there's that missing thing and you're like, what is that missing thing? What is it? What is it? What is it? And I spent all this time and money and whatever on my ingredients and it's still kind of like, so this is where I'm going to I'd like 3 people to come up here with Jenna and be my taste testers.
Who else wants to come? Yeah, come on.
Come on up. And we are going to do what I call a fast check. So we've got our fat in here. Now we're going to talk about how you finish off a soup. So what I am going to do first, everybody gets a spoon.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we've got to go from yuck to yum, right? 1 is the worst. I would never eat this. 10 is that involuntary spasm of vocal delight where you go, right? And I'm just going to see where we are. Okay. So, I'm not going to say where we are. But I'm going to have bring your spoons over. This is like the magic trick. This is like, once you master this and you have your little cards, you'll apply it to any cooking you do.
Needs salt, yes.
Right.
Yes.
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 Oh my God.
It needs acid and salt.
Oh my
Complete
God.
agreement.
Who's been studying their card?
No, I actually am a real devotee of your books.
Oh my God.
See?
You're a fast master.
I'm not alone.
You're a fast master, you know. Okay, so let me explain what you're tasting to everybody. When something is kind of hanging in the back, right, of the palate, it's sort of like in Nowheresville, right? And what salt does is it moves flavor from the back of the palate, back here, to the front here, right? And because it's so bland, right, you can't taste any of the flavors that are in there. So we're going to put some salt in. And the other reason, so now everybody's walking around, you're going to be walking around with sea salt in your bags and lemons, right? Because what the lemon will do is acid acts like a little Pixar animated character that goes in and makes a food brighter, and also is going to bring up all those spices that are in here that we can't really taste, okay? So I'm not even going to ask for numbers because I know. All right.
It was spot on. Completely right.
All right. So I have a Meyer lemon here, which I brought from my tree. So I'm going to give it. Now, people are afraid of salt sometimes. Don't be. Do not be afraid of sea salt with its 80 plus minerals because, again, you're trying to make food taste good. It's not like having a lot of fake sodium in processed foods. Whole foods are full of potassium, and potassium and sodium are like Fred and Ginger Rogers. They're dance partners. They go together. Okay, so you're not gonna have a problem with adding, keep adding until you're getting where you want to get. All right. So I know that I've got to add 3 Rebecca pinches here. Okay, and then I know I'm going to add probably about 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. A little bit more lemon juice. See, it's like alchemy.
How are you making that decision?
The question is, how are you making that decision for our friends on the live stream?
Yes. Okay. How are we making that decision? Because it still wasn't bright enough. And I knew if I put in a little bit more lemon juice, I get some more spices coming up at the top. All right. Now, spoons again. And let's see if this has changed it. We could be almost there.
Still needs more. More lemon juice, too.
Okay, this is a pot of soup, so don't, and my broth was not seasoned, right? So I'm dealing with no seasoning. Okay, more lemon juice. And then I'm going to do one more thing that I haven't talked about. My grade B maple syrup. I call it a drape of mape, okay? And I'm only going to use like a little capful. And what that does, what the sweet will do, is even though the carrots are sweet and there's like a sweet underneath in the broth because of the sweet potatoes, a sweet can act not just as acting as a sweetener, but to round out and balance a flavor. Okay, one more time.
And are those things necessarily on your ingredient list, or those are just things we should have in our arsenal?
They're on my ingredients. I always cue you to taste and that you might want to add something else to it.
This is good. Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay, now one more taste because I'm going to put a little topper. So
Twist our arms.
Okay, so no, don't go anywhere because I've got to put the topper part on. So we're going to put the chermoula, which is a Moroccan pesto. And this, like a soup topper, or a dollop as I call it, dollop of yum, is like putting a piece of jewelry on a black dress.
Wow.
Did I get a wow?
got the
Did we hear a yum? Yum?
Involuntary delight.
Involuntary spasm of vocal delight.
It's vinegary, so it right?
Right, the chermoula. It's got more acid and more lime in it. So you all are going to taste this, but you just saw what I really wanted you to experience is this is what you take into your kitchen, right? Just these little ingredients here is going to make such a difference. Nobody should be eating at a 5 when you can eat at a 10. And what you'll do is you will tinker, and I wanted you to have the little cards, and it's in the book too, all about fat, acid, salty, and sweet. And you just follow that, And also the chermoula had some olive oil in it. So the chermoula was parsley, mint, so those really high, bright notes, and a little bit of sea salt, lemon juice, and olive oil, and that's it. And some spice, some cumin and paprika. But even if you were just to put and that, by the way, the topper you can use on fish, chicken, whatever. It's like a chimichurri. It's a Moroccan chimichurri. That's exactly what it is.
Amazingly delicious.
So that's what I have to share with you today. You are now, I hereby now dub you soup masters.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? We have just a couple more minutes. What should be the temp of the broth when you're cooking?
Room temp is fine. And even if you've just taken it out of the freezer and you've sort of defrosted it, it's fine. I mean, again, it's going to do what it's going to do. There's no hard and fast rules.
It might just take you longer to
it just
boil,
might,
right?
Exactly. That's all. It's going to slow the cooking time down. But room temperature ideal. But if you're doing it on the fly, go for it.
Hard to mess it up.
Right.
Yeah, down here. How do you know where to get good saffron?
Oh, okay. So there are a couple of places. There are lots of places online. At Whole Foods or it's called Spicely, and also I use them as a resource. What's great about them is they make these small boxes of spices, so you're not like buying huge, and they have beautiful saffron. Yeah, because you want it. You don't, and also the thing about saffron, no more in your cooking than half a teaspoon, or else you will get kind of a musky thing going.
Yeah, you talk about the number of threads.
Yeah,
And there's a sweet spot.
right. There's
Yeah.
a sweet spot. Don't pass.
Don't go over. Tips on animal protein-based broths. Yeah, and then you can turn it into.
Oh, so once you have your you can do the magic mineral broth one of two ways. You can do it as a vegetable broth, and then if you decide, hey, I want to make a bone broth, you can roast your bones, put it in the magic mineral broth, and let it, do its thing for a long time. Or you can just start with roast. You can do the whole thing, all your vegetables, roast your bones, put it in, and let it go. So either way, the thing about starting as a vegetable base is that it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of what you might use it for, but any way is fine.
And it's really easy to take it from the magic mineral to one of the broth variations.
Yeah.
Is the Instapot actually good for making bone broth?
I think it is just fine. It really, because basically you're cooking under pressure, and those minerals are they're coming right out. It's not. It's. If we were talking about, no, it's definitely, you're not losing anything in the Instapot because it's all trapped right in there. Right. Yeah. And it's all trapped right in there. No, it's perfectly fine.
All right. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you.
personally and on behalf of Google. We loved it.
Thank you so much.